and welcome to Science Fiction, Race, and Racism. This is a video blogging channel about the most famous and influential works in science fiction and how they deal with issues of race, ethnicity, racism, prejudice, and intolerance. Both the best and the worst, the most groundbreaking and insightful, and the most callous and clueless. Science fiction has a long history of both being opposed to racism, prejudice, and intolerance, but also of conscious or unconscious racism. Sci-fi fans, authors, and works are often said to be above, beyond, incapable of, and far past any prejudice. This is often the appeal of sci-fi, especially the most utopian works. Sometimes a sci-fi setting, story, or theme can be another way to comment upon, critique, or tear apart prejudice and hatred. For others, sci-fi is pure escapism, a way to get away from such issues. Sometimes this backfires. The most escapist sci-fi work is often the most racist. Sometimes the same three approaches or beliefs coexist within a work of sci-fi, within an author or a sci-fi fan. My name is Carroll. I'm Associate Professor of History at Northern Virginia Community College. I teach American, American Indian, and Latin American history. I've written mostly about wars, veterans, human rights, and genocide. I've also written some science fiction, mostly alternate history, including a sci-fi alternate history book, The Man in Black, the first of a series. After Frankenstein, the Alien series is the most popular and influential series to combine sci-fi with horror. 6 films stretch over 40 years, a web series, comics, books, and games. The series is also rare for both sci-fi and horror in having Academy Award nominations for its actors. It owes its success to its central premise, that a species that implants eggs that grow and then burst through the chest of its victims. The writers use this gruesomeness as a rape metaphor, an effective way of showing males the pain and horror of rape. The film was a feminist landmark in other ways. The Ripley character is the first truly strong female in sci-fi films. The Alien series also has almost a Marxist view of racism, that racism is driven by capitalism, and corporate greed drives colonialism. The first film is set in 2122, in a future where the U.S. is still dominant, and so are American problems with race. It depicts an American spaceship with an American crew working for an American oil company. The crew has 1 black member out of 7. It also has 2 British men, one later revealed to be an android. The black character and a blue-collar white complain of exploitation. The second film is set 57 years later. It features Colonial U.S. Marines heavily armed with nerve gas and even nuclear weapons. What this describes is the United States colonizing other planets for resources, recklessly altering environments driven by greed and power. These colonists are acting much like American and European colonists. They invade and attack the species already living there. They degrade them by calling them ignorant animals and call killing them bug hunts, similar to how whites invading America called natives Indians and Redskins, and Americans invading the Philippines called killing Filipinos nigger hunts. But the film's anti-colonialism and anti-capitalism shows evil corporations to be as much of a threat to humanity as the aliens. This was true in the first film, with treachery embodied in an android trader willing to kill humans to protect company profits. The film's strong implication is that corporations, capitalism, greed for profit are all themselves inhuman, and one is a mindless drone for chasing after them. In the second film, company and capitalist greed and deception are embodied in the character of Burke. He sent colonists to the planet knowing aliens were there, and then plots to implant aliens in several people and murder the rest, wanting to use the alien to develop weapons. Burke is angrily denounced by Ripley, quote, "I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a percentage." Burke is only stopped from being executed by alien attack. Burke escapes, and in a deleted scene he was captured by aliens and implanted with an egg, but Ripley declines to give him a merciful death. The second film also introduced the queen alien. Like many insects, they have a queen that lays many eggs. Some have commented this turns the aliens into dark females that breed endlessly, This is in line with racist tropes about hyper-fertile black or Latino women, whose sexuality and aggressiveness makes them a threat. If true, this would undercut most of the Alien series, its critique of colonialism, and its Marxist view of tying racism to capitalism. Or more likely, they simply modeled the alien species partly on insects, because so many fear them. In spite of its Marxist and anti-colonial message, Alien does undercut itself in the name of making the film entertaining and profitable. It is perfectly possible to view Aliens and see it as just an action film, even one with a gung-ho, pro-war, pro-imperialism, pro-right-wing America message. For this film, Ripley was often compared to Rambo, and Sigourney Weaver publicly apologized for its pro-gun message, since she's an activist for gun control. Also undercutting its anti-colonialism and anti-racism, at one point in the film, Ripley proposes outright genocide against the alien species, that it be completely wiped out by nuclear weapons. The audience laughs repeatedly in agreement. The line has become a meme, a gif, a slogan worn on t-shirts, you name it. All this means that in the future, U.S. colonial Marines are set up, prepared, and trained to exterminate entire species, and a nuclear weapon can be launched by someone as low-ranking as a lieutenant, and then conceivably a sergeant, or as in the film, even a corporal. This nuclear extermination is repeatedly cheered by the audience. This is quite remarkable, since it was at the height of Reagan renewing the Cold War, and public anxiety over nuclear war during the 1980s was at its highest since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The film also undercuts its anti-racist message by racial impersonation. Private Vasquez is played by a Jewish actress, Jeanette Goldstein, in such heavy makeup it's almost like blackface. Sci-fi fans likely recognize her from her other best-known role, the foster mother of John Connor in Terminator 2. They had to cover her light skin with dark brown makeup, her red hair with black hair, and her light eyes with dark contact lenses. Part of why they did this was likely because most Latina actresses wouldn't have put up with the racist mockery that her character did. One of the reasons for racist impersonation on film and elsewhere is for racists to control how the other will be viewed. The second Alien film says clearly that apparently even 200 years in the future, Latinos are still considered immigrants, even if they are American. They still face racist insults, and white audiences still laugh at them. Her supposed Latina accent is comically bad. Racist mockery. Vasquez is shown as super tough, and from the slums, of course, and threatening because of her strength. The Vasquez character has become a trope. That, quote, Vasquez always dies. What this means is that because strong women are threatening to men who hate or fear women, these characters must always die. This is especially true if they are not white. In more recent films, Michelle Rodriguez most often played this type of character. The third film in the series was the most poorly written and received. It takes place on a planet that is a prison colony. But what is striking is that almost all the prisoners are white. This is hopeful in an odd way. Perhaps in this future, they no longer lock up mostly people of color. But the film series shows American whites as the majority in space. And only for that disturbing reason are people of color not in large numbers in other planetary prisons. In the fourth film, Alien Resurrection, the character of General Martin Perez is played by Dan Hedaya, a Syrian Jew who usually plays Italians. Outside of a very anglicized cliche set in Spanish with no Latino accent, there's no other visible ethnic marker for him. There's only one other Latino in the film and one black character. Again, this is a mostly white, American-dominated future in space. By this time, most of humanity is under control of United Systems, with the United Systems military. Corporate powers, rather than nations, are the main power. United Systems is said to be a corporate uniting of the US, Europe, and China, replacing the earlier corporate power Weyland-Yutani, a British-Japanese corporation in line with Western nationalist fears of Japanese takeover. Alien 4 ends with the death of a nightmare version of race mixing, a human-alien mix. This creature is freakishly pale and distorted looking. Where other aliens were strong and hard to kill, this one is made to look weak and pathetic. In one sense, this could be viewed as a mockery of notions of white superiority. In another sense, it fits with older tropes of mixed-race people as doomed, tragic, the worst of both races, or in this case, species. Yet because the central metaphor of the Alien series is one of rape, this can also be seen as a portrayal of the horrors of a rape victim of a different race or species, forced to give birth to its rapist children. The Predator series in its second film tied the Alien series to it. A comic series, Alien vs. Predators, was an attempt to appeal to fan fiction, and then later comics, imagining aliens fighting predators. So, AVP, the film, was made, a simple-minded action thriller. Later, an even more simple-minded sequel. There is little thought given to any ideas. About the only one is repeating the awful ancient aliens' racism, that aliens taught humans to build pyramids and were worshipped as gods. Besides being deeply racist, the problem is we know how pyramids were built. Pyramids were successfully recreated using techniques of the time by Nova PBS decades ago. But the Predators are shown as honorable people with a warrior code, one with higher ethics than the samurai or Vikings. They do not kill those who are unarmed. They do not kill the pregnant or any others who can't fight back. They retrieve the dead and mourn them. They honor those who defeat them with gifts. They are humanoid, but besides that, the only resemblance they have to any humans is their dreadlocked hair, later changed to tentacles. And they have a system where the highest ideal is to be a good hunter and a good fighter. But they are not colonizers, and they do not conquer other people or other species. The original Predator had the most multicultural set of soldiers seen since the old World War II films that had one from each ethnic group. The Predator team in Predator 1 has 2 blacks, 1 Latino, 1 native, and is led by an immigrant. And the token white American is a redneck and homophobic. But the native soldier seems to be magical, since he can see or sense the alien when no one else can, and he chooses to die fatalistically. The 2 Alien prequels, Alien Covenant and Prometheus, were the most poorly received since the 3rd film, because they are just as confused. Ridley Scott said his original intent was to argue Christianity itself was based on aliens visiting the Earth, but to avoid being obvious, he used Greek and Aztec beliefs instead. The central premise that humanity was created by aliens called engineers is more ancient aliens racist nonsense. Of course, the ancestors of man are shown as not just white humanoids, but albino white, looking very much like Lex Luthor with melanin deficiency. There is a long history in the worst of sci-fi equating white people or white skin to advanced or futuristic. Even sci-fi trying its best to be progressive and anti-racist, like Star Trek, were sometimes guilty of it. Ridley Scott could have shown the engineers as not even humanoid. It would have been far more interesting and likelier to be accurate. Instead, he undercut his own original messages yet again, ending his series with films that confused and angered most of his audience. This is the end of the 13th video. Please repose freely, like, share, and comment. The next and the last video, we will discuss Terminators use humans' own racism against them. This has been Science Fiction, Race, and Racism video blog and channel.